how the national capital has now pulled the plug on end-of-life vehicles with fuel pumps set to deny fuel to old polluting cars and bikes. Fuel stations will also have cameras to scan and identify these vehicles, enforcing the crackdown. But as far as this move is concerned, I'm given to understand my guest is joining us this evening. Hormazd Sorabjee, editor, Autocar India. Mr. Sorabjee, thank you very much for taking the time out and joining us here this evening. Given in the larger ambit of how every year we also talk about the deterring air quality in the national capital, more so as to this particular step in that purview of vehicular pollution to be cut down. But how do you look at it? Is the burden of environment protection solely falling on vehicle owners?
Well, I think, I think clearly you have to get the really polluting cars off the road. There's no doubt about that. And, I think the logic is that the older cars are more polluting. But, I have an issue with certain, let's say time frames. It doesn't mean that, after 15 years, and it's a rolling 15 years, that the cars automatically become polluting. So technically, once you uh, get into, let's say, even BS4 and BS6 cars, they're pretty clean to start with. So I think using a date cutoff doesn't make sense. It makes more sense using an emissions regulation cutoff. That makes a lot more sense. Which is not being done. So I think this date, 10 and 15 years, which they have 10 years for diesel and 15 years for petrol, is a bit ad hoc. Also, I think clearly, as you said, vehicles aren't the only culprits for causing pollution, but I think they're the easiest target. But I think clearly one thing should be done is to get the polluting cars off the road. I think that definitely needs to be done. But I'm not sure if, let's say, a 15-year or even a 10-year-old diesel car right now, as we moved into a BS4 scenario, is necessarily polluting. So I think that's really what is not doesn't give the right kind of approach to kind of reducing vehicular pollution by just having a date set on it.
As you're talking about the approach as well that's been meted out in this particular plan of theirs, do you think at some point it would have been better to have a trial first and then go into this particular mode? Do you think there are loopholes as well as to how this is playing out at the moment?
Well, I think obviously we always have these sudden bans and things being done very knee-jerk, and that obviously causes more than anything a lot of inconvenience. It disrupts, let's say the lives of motorists when it's just suddenly being done like that. So I think, yeah, clearly it has to be kind of thought out. And as I said, principally, it's good to get the polluting vehicles off the road. That needs to be done. But I just think, as I said, it needs to have a more calibrated approach to doing it. And, I think there has to be a kind of a phase out of certain vehicles, or you stop giving vehicles, let's say with a certain, let's say less than BS4 or even BS3, because it's really the older ones which are really very, very polluting. Even BS4, honestly, is a big step ahead and not as polluting as some of the real older vehicles.
As you also pointed out, the other aspect of this is, since you mentioned how it is inconvenient as well for car owners at the moment. So, in your opinion, what are the options before owners of all vehicles at the moment?
Well, I think, clearly they would have to kind of get rid of them. Unfortunately, there aren't too many incentives for owners to do that. So obviously, it comes at a big financial cost to a lot of the owners. But I think, that's something they would have to bear at some point. And I think clearly the writing has been on the wall for these older vehicles. It's not that it's coming as a total surprise. This 10 and 15-year rule in Delhi of deregistration of cars older than that has been around for a while. And I think this is one way of just trying to enforce it even more. So it doesn't come as a surprise, but of course, there's a huge financial burden, on people. Cars are getting a lot more expensive right now. Mobility is no longer cheap. So really, it's a full, convenience versus environment debate. So and balance. So I think it is going to be challenging times for motorists.
Talking about challenging times as well, Mr. Sorabjee, in your opinion, will this also at some point discourage sales of new diesel vehicles? How are you looking at that?
Oh, definitely, it has already impacted sales of new diesel vehicles in the NCR. And, while there could have been a case for 10-year-old diesels in the past, but right now, uh, as we move into 2025, 2015 diesel, I don't think it's necessarily, that polluting as, let's say, a pre-2010 petrol vehicle, which is a BS3 vehicle. So, BS4 came in April 2010. And clearly, as I said, you have to look at the emission standards. And with each, let's say, emission upgrade to the more tighter norm, all engines are getting cleaner. So this rule has to be relooked at some point, because soon we'll get into, let's say, by 2030, you'll then start banning a 2020 diesel, which is BS6 compliant, which really is a very, very, let's say, a very clean kind of emission, a relatively clean emission compared to the previous ones. And again, that doesn't make sense at all. So I think this 10 and 15-year-old rule has to be relooked at.
The other aspect also over here would be, in your sense, if I'm just looking at this particular situation, do you think OEMs will perhaps be rethinking their portfolio for cities like Delhi? Is there a possibility of that?
They're already doing that. So I think, having just a diesel, you're very vulnerable. There are some brands which are diesel only. Jeep, for one, is diesel only right now. So clearly, you can see the impact on their sales, especially in the NCR region. You've got certain models which are diesel only, like the Tata Harrier and Tata Safari. Again, their sales in the NCR region are negligible. So I think everyone needs to have a petrol option, and even going further, maybe an EV option as an insurance against these sort of let's say restrictions and eventual bans.
Also given the aspect that Indian manufacturers don't provide devices that reduce pollution, while such cars are available in South Asian countries. So, in a sense, is it safe to also find out if these manufacturers are also responsible for this situation? What do you make of that? How do you look at that aspect?
I think it's the manufacturers meet the emission norm laid out by the government authorities, and they have to follow them. So I don't think there's any question of the the let's say the OEMs or the manufacturers not doing their bit. They don't have a choice. Either you meet the norm or you can't sell your car. And as the norms get stricter, they automatically become cleaner. So I think it's more a question of meeting the regulation and how stringent the regulation is becoming. Right now, we are on a BS6 D, regulation, which is really the toughest right now before we go to BS7, which is still some time away. And a lot of these engines, especially diesel engines, are laboratories on wheels, literally cleaning up NOx or oxides of nitrogen, particulate matter, all the kind of, let's say, pollutants that there are, with very sophisticated, after treatment or in the exhaust. So I think manufacturers have no choice. So, to say that they're responsible, they're as responsible as the regulations that they have to meet.
Talking about regulations that have to be met, as far as this particular plan that is concerned, we also did sort of check as to how this is working out. And what we're given to understand is that the ANPR system, that is the way that this is going to be captured for the vehicles at all these fuel stations, it also seems in a sense very tech oriented. But is the enforcement mechanism, in your opinion, ready, or will there be loopholes and challenges, Mr. Sorabjee?
I think there'll always be loopholes and challenges, because I think clearly, I think there are ways to game the system. I don't think I'm not sure if every fuel station, depending on who the dealer is, the owner is, I think there will be ways to kind of somehow get the fuel you need. People still today get fuel in jerry cans. That can be one way, which is still being done. So it is possible to get around this, and but I think obviously there is going to be a tightening, and it won't be that easy, to get the fuel if your car exceeds the age limit.
Also, we'll have to wait and watch as to how this is going to pan out. But do you think this would be a good example or perhaps be taken in the larger aspect by cities like Mumbai, Bengaluru, or Pune? Or they might want to perhaps wait and watch as to how this is going to work in the national capital. Given all of us, doesn't matter which city we're in, we're all looking at a very, poor air quality system that has affected Indian metro cities.
Yeah, but I think at the end of the day, you have to see the balance of between will this have any, how much of an impact this will have on air quality improvement vis-a-vis the kind of tumultuous disruption it will have on personal mobility. So I think that's what needs to be weighed up. So I think you have to see that balance. And clearly, it's not. It may seem that it may not be really having much of an impact because in certain cities there are other forms of pollutants which override what is coming out of the tailpipe. I think in the north we know that crop burning is one of the biggest issues of particulate matter emissions. So I think it's. I think it's unfortunately what we don't have is that balance and then finding out the impact of taking some of these drastic steps, huge, as I said, huge kind of, let's say, impact on the lives of motorists. But does it have that much impact on air quality? That needs to be seen.
Absolutely, because like you rightly pointed out, factors like stubble burning in the north, but given the aspect that, like how you pointed out, we'll have to see how that impact is going to be and if there's going to be change with that particular step. But Mr. Sorabjee, thank you very much for taking the time out and joining us here
Thank
on
you.
ET Now. But for the moment, we leave it at that.